Okay, thanks for joining us at we're MedHeads at MedCity News. I'm Stephanie Baum, digital health editor, and I'm joined by my colleagues Neil Versell in Chicago, and whereabouts are you, Neil?
I'm 28 floors above Chicago right now.
All right, and
Up,
this is
up on the roof.
on the roof of your.
On the roof of my building. We're a little bit about 4 miles north of downtown. I could walk over to the fence there and show you Wrigley Field off in the distance, but I don't feel like getting up.
Look like you're about ready to give a traffic report.
Yeah, there's the lake if you look way down there.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice location,
Nice.
Neil.
Yeah.
Yeah, well scored. Anyway, and also joined by Neil Versell, of course, is our health technology reporter in Chicago, and also joined by Megan Akeshavan, who's usually in San Diego, but this week you're somewhere different, aren't you?
I am. I'm in New York City. I'm in Manhattan.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mixed it up a little bit.
Cool. Okay, and the reason why you happen to be in Manhattan is because you came to the East Coast to journey to Bio 2015, the International Convention, Bio International Convention. And Neil, you also were at a conference this week. But let's start with Bio. So Megan, you came to Philadelphia this week to attend Bio.
Yeah.
Any first impressions? Or not first impressions. I mean, this is your second year.
Yeah, this is my
there.
second bio. Last bio was my first week on this job, so I'm at my first year anniversary here, so I'm going to applaud myself.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Nice. Glad to have you still.
Yeah. So, yeah, bio was, well, everybody was there. You know, it was chock full of pharmaceutical representatives and biotech folks and journalists. You know, it was pretty bio. I do have to tell you guys, bio is it is confirmed. I went and I talked to lots of people at these multiple networking events, and they're all there for partnering. This is a partnering conference, and the deals will probably be announced in a couple months at JP Morgan. You know, that same cycle will continue this year. That's what everyone says.
Do they actually get deals done there? I know that at HIMSS, which is our big one in health IT, nobody ever gets any deals done. All the vendors tell me they just say it's a good time for them to catch up with all their customers in one place.
Yeah, it's that, and it's just making the connections.
Okay.
I think that there were 29,000 partnering meetings.
Wow.
Which is a lot. Yeah. So I mean, that's just like the formal partnering meetings, you know, to say nothing of the different ones that actually occurred in the different bars and restaurants around Philadelphia, which are delicious, by the way. Philadelphia, great food. But yeah, no, it was everybody was there. A guy I dated in college was there. You know, everything.
Is he in the biotechnology world as well?
He is. He does tech transfer. It was very funny. We talked shop. I hope you're not watching this.
You should have had him live tweet this.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not. But so what were you went to a few sessions there? What would you say was one of the more interesting ones, or where there was a lot of anything that you thought stood out over the others?
Actually, I thought the first session I went to had just something that stood out. It was a panel on the 30 years of venture investing in life sciences, and two of the panel members were really, really impressive, biotech folks. Bob Langer over at MIT, he's got like more than 1,000 patents to his name, and then the founder of Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and so he talked about his story and founding, this, hugely popular orphan company back in 1989, and they talked about what the venture environment was in the past and what it's like today in comparison. And this Vertex guy was just talking about what's his name? Joshua Boger. Sorry. He was talking about how he thinks venture capitalists are too scientific now, which is really interesting.
You mean that they kind of venture where fools venture where angels fear to tread kind of thing? Or, I mean,
No.
or they to the point where they're just trying to take over the management of particular drug development or
it's more like that. It's like because these venture investors are becoming so scientific, it's treading on the foots of the treading on the domain of actual scientists is what Boger was trying to say, which is interesting because, on one hand, like there's so much risk in life sciences investment that you would think that having an investor who is very well informed would improve the likelihoods of having like a successful exit. But the downside is that since you're trying to stack the odds towards a good scientific exit, like having strong enough science for a good exit, it's not necessarily strong enough science for like a long-term company strategy is what I got out of it, which is sort of an interesting observation, really, because venture capital really is being criticized in doing late-term deals and trying to just worry about the exit, worrying about the money as opposed to what the science is, even though they do have the scientific underpinnings. So I thought that was a really interesting one. What else? Like, there were a lot of reports that were released, and
there was an M&A deal M&A report that you wrote up.
Yeah. So on the last day, there was an interesting M&A panel. That what I thought was interesting is that it kind of called out which sectors are more, attractive for acquisition and which ones are more like, what's a seller's market, what's a buyer's market, basically. And so CNS drugs, companies that are developing CNS therapeutics, that's pretty hot right now, Like if somebody's developing it, there's somebody out there who wants to buy it. But on the other side...
That's interesting, though, because I would have thought with Alzheimer's disease treatments, there is so much risk in that area, or has that changed a lot as far as attitudes are concerned in that market?
No, it hasn't. I mean, there is a ton of risk in that. Actually, it's funny because last week you and I, Stephanie, were joking about Axevent Technologies, and that huge IPO they had. So at one of the networking events that I went to, I was talking about that deal, and they were just, frankly, they were talking again about how it's indicative of a big bubble and like how there is a lot of risk in Alzheimer's, but I think that there's just a lot of interest in Alzheimer's, which is my guess on why it's a more attractive acquisitive target. But and then on the other end of the spectrum were antivirals and GI, I think. So maybe there's just not as much innovation going on in that space. I'm going to look into it a little further. I thought it was a really fascinating report. It's from Campbell something or another. Sorry.
We'll come up with a name by the end of this session, I'm sure.
Campbell Alliance? I think it was Campbell Alliance.
Alliance.
Yeah.
It has been a long week.
It's been a really it's been a long life, my friends. Long life.
you guys should have been coming from bars today the way I did the day after HIMSS ended.
I would pass out. My sister, I got to Manhattan last night, and my sister was like, "You want to go to a bar?" And I was like, "No, take me to your apartment." I plan not to leave.
Sure, and we also, I mean, I did drop by. I did spend some time at the bio conference looking at the digital health side, but it was interesting because in the sessions there was a lot. I guess I was surprised at the comfort level, between just the number of pharmaceutical companies that are and medical device companies that are interested in this space and are piloting digital health tools and trials. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation with Eric Topol talking about Dr. Eric Topol at Scripps, who was talking about the interest in using these devices in clinical trials, the potential for reducing the cost of drug development, and yet where was the exhibition area for the digital health company? It was in the basement.
I know, it was so dank. It was so dank down there. I didn't. I
There
wanted
was
to
like
leave
there was no
quickly.
signage. There was like it was they sort of we love you, but we want to keep you at arm's length. And it was kind of an interesting. I mean, it was one of those cases where all the talk that was going on in the digital health sessions didn't really match up with the reality on the ground, as far as it from a conference perspective is concerned. Anyway, it's like, yes, we think they should be in the same building, but maybe our relationship isn't close enough to be in the same in the same hall. But I mean, with some noticeable exceptions. I think Moby Health News put together a chart saying, okay, well these startups are working with these pharmaceutical and medical device companies, and I think Dr. Topol retweeted it at some point. And it was so those startups had obviously found a home or found a niche in those companies, but everybody else is still on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me, and I discussed this with Stephanie yesterday. Reminds me, speaking of Moby Health News, when I was a contributor to Moby Health News back in 2012, and HIMSS was in Las Vegas, but the meeting wasn't at the Las Vegas Convention Center, but at the Sands, which is a 2-level exhibit hall, and the main floor is a regular big space with really high ceilings, and then the lower level is only like 13 or 14 foot ceilings. And after consulting with me, Brian Dolan actually went with the headline, HIMSS puts mobile health in the basement, which they literally and figuratively did then.
Really?
Felt like, yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting contrast. But I mean, so Neil, you were at a conference this week.
Right.
You were at the Health Innovation Summit in Chicago,
Right.
and it's only been sort of the third or fourth year that they've done that.
Third
correct?
year, yeah. It's a small meeting. I can't even remember. It's a small meeting. This is the first year though that it's now being run by the HIMSS organization, mostly because HIMSS just has the meeting planning and personnel and infrastructure. So it's kind of been handed off to them, and it's in Chicago this year, but I believe next year it's going to be. Now I'm blanking out, but it's somewhere out west. That's not here, but
California.
It's going to be somewhere in California, but it's a big state, as Megan I'm sure knows pretty well. I think it's going to be. It may actually be Las Vegas. Actually, I may be wrong.
Okay, so
but,
not California.
But anyway.
So what was noticeable at that conference?
Yeah. What's noticeable? It's a small. First time I had covered it. It's a small meeting, about 250, 300 people. And the breakout sessions only had two tracks, so it certainly wasn't the kind of content, and there was no vendor exhibition, with the exception of a couple of sessions where it was kind of like digital health speed dating, where they gave 15-minute presentations, then you move to the next station. 3 in a room at a time, and 2 rooms going, with this going on in 2 different rooms.
Sure.
And by the way, cocktails were being served during part of it, so
nice.
It wasn't.
So you did an interesting story about telemedicine and the sort of the move away from, I suppose, a lot of people associate telemedicine with video conferencing,
right?
Interaction, but not so much.
It's been shown. Well, it's been shown that, I guess by experience, and there probably are some actual published peer-reviewed studies out there too. But it's been the experience of a lot of people in telemedicine that you don't have to use video to make things work well. And we've been hearing a lot about the video side of telemedicine with the upcoming IPO of Teladoc, as well as American Well's lawsuit against Teladoc, and companies like that have been in the news a lot lately. But asynchronous communications are very useful for a lot of things. So are things as simple as text messages, which I guess could be considered asynchronous as well. But you don't necessarily have to have a live video chat. I mean, this doesn't have to be a live video chat, although it's a lot more interesting, I think, than if we were just jump on a conference call and hope people dialed in. But I think that sometimes you don't need to spend all the money for a secure video infrastructure when other things work just fine. If you're,
Sure.
just need to send a picture for wound care, you could just have a still photo, and again,
Right.
that would be asynchronous.
Right, and just I know there was some sort of a study at the HIMSS conference earlier this year about the impact of just sending a reminder message like 1 or 2 days before someone's appointment, and just the noticeable boost in attendance.
Yeah,
That's
although I'm
very
not sure
simple.
that I'm not sure that qualifies as telemedicine. Although the definition is broad and
Yeah,
ever
that'd be more like
and
telehealth or
ever,
something.
it would be more like patient engagement, just moving the postcard reminder that you used to get to the phone or to email or to the patient portal or something like that. But the patient portal could also be a way to engage via telehealth if you wanted to upload your symptoms to your doctor, and then the doctor can make a decision later on, if you need to come in or not.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Steffi, you were talking about that kind of stuff with Eric Topol a bit too, and he had some.
He loves it. He loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he showed us his Apple Watch and how he has his own reminders and things like that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is that watching him on stage talking a mile a minute about all these devices that are coming out, you would think that it was imminent, and yet in our talk with him, he emphasized that it's still in the early stages of being piloted, and the interesting thing, I guess, is one of the interesting things is that the sizes of these pilots is getting larger and larger, and as pharmaceutical companies, especially their venture arms, invest in these technologies, then there is a greater willingness to experiment and play around with them, and evaluate them as far as partnering with the drugs that they're developing. So it's still early days, but still a lot of exciting things happening in that space.
Yeah, when we chatted with Eric Topol, I was gonna call him Eric, but I don't think we're on first name basis. We were chatting with him. He was a lot more sober in his conversation with us than he was on the stage, when he was very charismatic and very, this is the way of the future, but and he still thinks it's the way of the future in our one-on-one conversations, but he had a more,
sobering look at it, yeah.
A more sobering look at it, really, yes.
Yeah, because I remember, after his presentation, his keynote, he had a Q&A with a fireside chat with Francis Collins from NIH, and he was saying, did you excite them or scare them? And that seems like an apropos question right now, because it seems like something is either overhyped, and if you don't get into it now, then you'll be left behind, kind of thing, or just this has no relevance, and backing away from it.
Steph, I think he scares people because he likes to shake up the status quo. And you may remember the reason why he's no longer at the Cleveland Clinic is because he ruffled too many feathers. He was the one who actually blew the whistle on Vioxx back in 2004, I think. He was behind the nationwide recall, or he got the ball rolling for that. And he said since then that he thinks that pharma marketing is sometimes way too dangerous, and he says that he prescribes more apps than drugs, and you know how many drugs the typical cardiologist prescribes.
Sure.
And also, I'm thinking back to if you get a chance, Google Eric Topol's TEDMed talk from 2009, I believe it was. I think it was 2009, but Google Eric Topol TEDMed, where he talked about he went up on stage. Took off his stethoscope and threw it in the trash to symbolically say, and this was 6 years ago, next year, 2016, is the 200th anniversary of the invention of the stethoscope. So it's 200-year-old technology that's still the standard of care in medicine. And he said, and then he pulled out a GEV scan ultrasound and said, why can't we do this? You can get a much better picture. It's much more accurate. You're not just, with actual data, and not just relying on your memory matching up to the sound that you're hearing of the heart. Now, the GE ultrasound, I think at that point cost about 8 to 10 grand. I don't know if the cost has come down. Obviously, that's prohibitive for the average primary care doctor, but you mentioned that to the average primary care doctor or someone who's been in practice for a very long time, and they say that's ridiculous. I got the stethoscope I can get for $200 and do almost as good of a job as something that cost 8,000, and why spend the extra money? But part of it is people just don't want to change.
That ties in so well with one portion of our discussion with Dr. Topol, where he was very frustrated. He said frustrated several times in the conversation about how doctors are very slow to adopt pharmacogenomics.
Oh yeah.
Oncologists have the tools apparently at their hands if they want them, and are not pursuing genomic testing to determine a patient's reaction to a chemotherapeutic. It was an interesting bit of conversation. He is definitely a futurist, but I agree. It's frustrating if these tools are right here for us to start accessing, and people just aren't because they're used to the status quo.
Yeah, and it's also something to do with the culture of the hospitals where they're at, and well, I don't know. I mean, you could say on the one hand maybe they're risk averse, but at the same time, if the whole idea is to avoid a terrible error being made, then you'd think that they would embrace it. But yeah, I think it's just like any new technology until they sort of feel comfortable delivering it and know how to deliver it on their terms. And
it starts getting taught as part of practice also. I mean, he was mentioning how it's only now starting to get folded into medical schools, but it's alien. And doctors are, as you said.
But that's rather fast, given the 17-year time that's been the average for getting new research into bedside clinical practice. The fact that that genomics has and the first Francis Collins, in fact, was the one who sequenced the first genome, right?
Yeah, well.
And he ran that project, and that was only 15 years ago.
That's when I was working in a lab almost. Yeah, I was working in a lab back then, by the way, and the idea that anyone could sequence an entire genome was beyond comprehension. It's kind of insane how things have changed anyway.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, were there any other news items that stood out for you guys this week?
I think it's kind of interesting that MIT is launching its Hacking Medicine Institute.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I talked with one of the founders while at Bio about it, and the idea is to sort of bring some of the Sorry, I'm using the word innovation, and I make fun of people using the word.
You're allowed.
I love that tweet of yours, by the way. That story of yours.
I don't think Bio liked it. Bio's changing from Biotechnology Industry Organization to Biotechnology Innovation Organization.
That's right. How could we forget that?
I think it's a little hackneyed. I'm like, really? I mean,
at least they didn't put the word solution in there.
Oh. Ooh, no. But that'd be the BSO then.
With the emphasis on the first. Now, you know where I'm going with this. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, Hacking Medicine. So, there's having participated in a hackathon, there's a lot of innovation that can go on in it. I see that. But it's very unstructured. It's very fluid. It's very organic. But it's also it's a bunch of kids getting together and coming up with a cool idea and seeing what'll stick. And so the idea of the Hacking Medicine Institute is to also put people from disparate backgrounds into the same room in small groups to talk about how to improve issues. But they are doing it with a heavy industry focus. They want to help fold digital health more effectively into pharmaceuticals. And they want to do that by getting somebody from the tech industry together with someone from the pharma industry and a hospital person and an insurer and an investor, and just a focus group of 5 people. Give them a problem that could use digital health and figure out in a short burst of time how that can happen. So they're very selected targets of what should get done. So it's not quite like a hackathon. It's not trying to create a new technology. It's trying to create a solution that'll make more sense with the technology that already exists out there. Sure. But it's an interesting concept because you get all these. We have our own conference called Converge. Where we're trying to talk. Yeah, and it's coming up. But
# shameless self-promotion.
No, I mean it.
No, but we.
Yes.
And
But
we just landed Susanna Fox as our closing keynote speaker.
That's for Engage.
That's for Engage. Same idea. It's okay. Another
July
conference.
14th.
yes, but there is a convergence going on, as we have noted in our own conference. But the idea in this Hacking Medicine Institute is to make it really small scale and just getting a very, very select group of people together to converge on these issues and try and come up with something that makes a little bit more sense. It's a little bit lither.
Is the idea that there's a commercial partner waiting in the wings when they come up with one of these solutions?
Probably. But my gathering is that it's meant for people who already have no, actually I think that she said the opposite. All of the stakeholders that they're trying to gather together already have the power of the pen. You know, they can write the checks themselves.
I see. Okay.
It's to help them do a better job within their own organizations. And also, so the first one's going to be in October this year in Cambridge, but then next year they're going to do it in Washington, D.C., and they are trying to involve the federal government as well to try and get some policy on it also. So, anyway.
Okay.
Pretty interesting.
That's cool. Yeah, interesting story. Neil, how about you?
Yeah, a story that I just posted maybe an hour ago is fairly interesting to me. It was an interview that I did with Dr. Ray Dorsey at the University of Rochester. He's the head of, I think he is the head of neurology telemedicine up there, and he has been working on, he's been doing some research on treating Parkinson's via telemedicine that I think is very interesting.
How does that work?
Well, you don't have to. It can be done by video, but there's also an app that his center at the University of Rochester helped develop along with a tech vendor that was actually featured by Apple at the rollout of ResearchKit back in, I believe it was March,
right.
As one of the first ResearchKit apps made available for healthcare, for medicine, and it essentially tracks the daily behaviors of people with Parkinson's or people who have Parkinson's-like symptoms, and can help inform researchers as to whether treatments are working or not.
Oh wow! Okay.
So yeah, I encourage you to go ahead and read it. It might even be the lead story on MedCityNews.com right now, still, unless somebody's posted something recently.
It might be.
So,
I'll have to take another look at that.
Okay.
No, it's still up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Going forward, anything of interest coming up that's on your radar that you'll be paying attention to?
I think this week was the close, or maybe it was the end of last week was the close of comments for the modifications to Stage 2 meaningful use. Now, I didn't really report on that because there were just too many groups out there who submitted comments, but we'll know in the next couple of months whether HHS is listening to consumers. That's something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on.
Okay. And just since you did file a story about Teladoc's the pricing of its IPO, or the price range of its IPO, and then obviously we had the historic, the record-breaking $732 million fund IPO from Fitbit. Who do you think is going to be next on the to file an IPO? Do you think it'll be another telemedicine company? Do you think it'll be in the digital, another part of the digital health space?
Well, that's a good question.
If you just had to throw a knife at the dark.
Yeah. Oh boy. I couldn't even think. I heard rumblings of somebody.
ZocDoc?
Okay. It might be ZocDoc. Yeah, ZocDoc would be an interesting one. ZocDoc is doing something right. They kind of, without positioning themselves as ZocDoc is kind of like the open table of physician appointments, isn't it?
I think it's something like that. It's the idea that you would schedule an appointment with a physician when it's convenient for you, and there would be some inevitably there would be some physician.
I could definitely see that happening, and I remember Mark Smith, who was the former president of the California Healthcare Foundation about 4 or 5 years ago, saying why is it so easy for him to make a last-minute restaurant reservation on a Saturday night in San Francisco with his phone, but so hard for him to get a last-minute appointment with a doctor. And
Sure.
just less than a year later, ZocDoc happened to pop up. I don't think there was one had anything to do with each other, but I remember him musing about that. And it's a perfect opportunity out there, and they've jumped in and seized it. And there have been some others that have come in as well, but that's a good one to keep an eye on. Actually, Stephanie, good call.
Sure. And Megan, what about you? Anything you were looking at coming up for next week?
And I think that that the Teladoc IPO is actually going to happen next week because they announced the pricing this week. So
that's right.
It's a good chance it'll probably happen
in
the next few days.
Okay, well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Yeah. Meghna?
I thought that the medical device tax repealed by the House was quite interesting, especially if they're going up against a threat of veto. So I am intrigued to see how this is going to unfold. The House has always been very strong on a repeal of this tax, but and it's been more getting the Senate on board. But this is still a very public win for medical device makers. I don't know what it means for the ACA necessarily, but.
Well, we just overlooked the biggest news that's coming down, and that's the Supreme Court ruling on King v. Burwell.
Of course.
We thought it was going to happen today, but it doesn't look like it. I don't think it's going to at this point in the day.
4:15.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. And Neil, do you have any thoughts about how that, or have you seen any or heard any interesting takes on how that might impact at the state or among your contacts? They've given you any insights about?
No, not really, because my contacts are all in health IT and and on the provider side, and we're talking about health insurance, which I remind people once again, health insurance is not the same thing as health care, and we've been debating just health insurance reform for the last 5 years. Haven't really talked too much about health care reform, except that there are real elements of health care reform in the Affordable Care Act that I would say 90% of the public and probably 99% of the public who is not within the healthcare industry has no idea about, because when you mention the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, they immediately start talking about insurance, subsidies, exchanges, blah, 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 and the cost of their premiums, but nothing about actual care reform. So I don't know, is my short answer.
Okay. Well, let's leave it at that.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think we're out of time anyway. So this has been MedHeads. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you'll enjoy seeing the rebroadcast at your leisure on YouTube and on our website. So goodbye from me, Stephanie Baum in Philadelphia, and why don't you sit and goodbye from
Manhattan.
Chicago. Where am I?
I'm gonna say to you. All right.
Yeah,
have a good.
See Chicago right down there.
Don't get dizzy.
Manhattan right out there.
Yeah. All right.
I'm in an office. Anyway, have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.
Okay.
Bye bye.